Hey, it's Carla, and if it's one thing I know, it's that you guys love it when I make pasta. So in this episode, we put together some of my best and favorite pasta episodes, classics such as aglio e olio with all the parsley, my meatball recipe, which I finally committed to the canon. We've got my new and improved pasta fagioli, which I really do believe is better than the original, and a rosemary ragu with polenta. Is polenta pasta? Discuss. Sit back, relax, and enjoy so many bowls of pasta. Hello, you people. It's Carla, and I'm here today in my kitchen making fun of my people, the Italians, and today I am making spaghetti aglio e olio with all the parsley. Even when there's nothing in the house, you probably have spaghetti, oil, and garlic. Perhaps you have seen daddy pasta. This is alone pasta. This is the pasta that you eat alone in the TV room and grate cheese all over it, even though technically you're not supposed to, and you just have the best kind of night alone. Greetings from Festivus, where everything sparkles and is bright. I am here to remind you that the best gift that you could give someone is the gift that I picked out for you to give to them. So this year I put together a gift shop of all of my favorite edible things. I organized it by sweet, spicy, sour, bitter, smoky. So you will find a gift to represent all of those different flavors in my shop. The link is in the description. You can buy one individual thing. You can buy all of the things. You can send them to the people you love, or you can give them to the people that you are simply obligated to give a gift to this year. But these are delicious things that whoever receives them is going to use, touch, and love every day. It's also from me to you to them. So happy giving and getting. Florence, do you want to be on camera? Oh, yes. Do you like garlic? Do you want to smell it? Goodbye, Marge. Even though the parsley is going to go into the dish last, I'm going to do the prep first and just get it out of the way. I have, what looks to be about a bunch of parsley, and what I'm gonna do is use not only the leaves, but also these stems, and I'll kind of roughly chop the leafy part and then go a little bit more fine when I get down to the stem, because they do have more texture to them, so I want to make them thinner so that they get nice and soft. Even though they're barely going to get cooked, they'll just get tossed through at the end. And like all desperation pastas, this is one where in the time it takes for the water to come to a boil and the pasta to cook through, you can make your sauce. That's why we love these styles of pastas, just super simple but with a ton of flavor. Next up is garlic. I'm using a copious amount. Use the amount that is right for you, but remember that garlic, the aglio, is in the title of the dish, so this should be garlicky. And you can kind of deal with the garlic in all sorts of ways. You could smash it and let it be craggy and get toasty that way. You could chop it. Because it's a bunch of cloves and because I have a mandolin, I'm going to use that to make even slices, and it will be quick as well because they're going to be like evenly sliced. They'll toast evenly, and I won't have to worry about some parts of it burning. Also, if you're afraid of vampires, recommend this dish. Salad of garlic. Again, I can do that because I'm Italian American. Those are the rules. All right, so that's it. Prep is done. I am gonna make kind of a variation on the classic. So like I said, you could do your garlic in lots of different ways. You could have greens or not greens. It could be parsley or it could be basil. It could be chives or it could be spinach. Like, you really have a lot of freedom. You can make it spicy or not spicy. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a kick. And then you can make it chovy or not chovy. It does not have to have these, as long as we're honoring the garlic and the oil. I think we're in really great shape. Okay, so we've got the garlic. Now we need the oil, and I'm gonna use copious amounts of it. This is extra virgin olive oil, and I do not have the heat on under this pan. That's very intentional. I'm gonna start the oil and the garlic together in a cold pan and bring them up to heat, rather than putting the garlic into hot oil where it will immediately start to brown around the edges and could get too dark too fast kind of before you know it. So with the heat on medium at the very beginning, the garlic is going in, and I'm gonna stir to coat, really keeping an eye on it. As soon as you start to see bubbles appearing around the garlic, that means that the moisture inside of the garlic has heated up to the point where it is starting to simmer, and that's what you're seeing, and now you're cooking. So just keeping an eye on it. I like garlic in lots of different kind of iterations of its rawness to its very cookedness or its roastiness, but for this dish, I'm looking for a really light kind of plywood colored, toasty brownness. Tan. I'm looking for tan. I'm seasoning the garlic because this is your aromatic ingredient. You're not waiting to season that. And I'm also adding a good amount of black pepper just because I love the flavor of black pepper. And adding it while the oil is hot at this stage is gonna bloom the pepper in the oil and open up a lot of the aromas. So use as much or as little as you like, but I like a lot. Okay, so now that the garlic is well on its way and I'm not behind, I'm gonna add the pasta. This has not been salted. I know it looks like a lot of salt, and it is a lot of salt, but the ratio of salt that I have learned over the years, and I can't remember if it was Samin Nosrat who said this or Missy Robbins, but a 1/4 cup for 6 quarts. A 1/4 cup, if you scoop that out, that's like gonna look like a lot of salt, and that's why it looks like a lot of salt when I dump it in there. But remember, you're seasoning the water so that the water can season the pasta. It's not like you're gonna eat a 1/4 cup of salt. All right, 1 pound of pasta. Whoops. You know, what the box says is like a 1/4 cup is 1 serving, which is 2 ounces, which means that 1 box of pasta is supposed to serve 8 people. That is only true if the people live in a dollhouse, first of all, or if the pasta course is going to be one of 4 courses that you're eating that night. For most human beings who I know, 1 box of pasta is good for 4 people. And if you live in a house with a large 13-year-old, as I do, 1 pound of pasta is now enough for 3 people. And you might have to put some random pasta that you found in an already open box to make sure. But if you are alone and you're doing alone pasta, I have come to learn that somewhere between 4 and 5 ounces will get you through a full like 45 to 50 minute program. You'll be there for a while, but like, what's more fun than like eating for longer? My pasta is in and my garlic is just about to arrive. I'm actually gonna turn the heat off because I was blah, blah, blahing and I don't want them to overcook. And I'm gonna add the anchovy and chili flake. Just the residual heat from the pan and the oil. The anchovies have completely disintegrated. It smells absolutely incredible, and the chili flake itself changed color a little bit and is blooming. So while this sits off heat, the pasta is gonna finish. That's gonna continue just infusing the oil. If you don't have tongs or a spider, you can scoop out about 1 cup or 1.5 cups of pasta water and then just transfer that hot pasta right into the garlic and oil mixture. So now everybody's in there. There's water in the bottom of the pan, which is going to prevent like things from burning. And I'm just gonna stir until this is hot. I'm gonna add a couple ladles of pasta water so we can get things to emulsify. I want that water and the oil and the starch from the pasta to start to emulsify. And now that this is like hot and beautiful, you could wait, you could add the parsley as the very last step. You could pass the parsley at the table if you wanted to, but I want it to have enough time in here to open up a little bit and cook so it doesn't have just that raw, super grassy parsley flavor. But see, look, now it looks healthy. And just like that, our pasta's done. Yeah, this looks beautiful, saucy, glossy, enough of everything, and not too much of anything. So I know I was being facetious earlier when I said that like the best thing that could happen to me would be to be alone. And I'm just saying that because like there's always someone here and I'm related to all of them. So sometimes you just like want to be alone, especially when no one got to be alone for a long time at home. I really miss that. And being alone with your thoughts or with your content is like, it's really good for you. Let's talk about all the other ways that alone pasta, aka aglio e olio, aka Iggly Wiggly, as my children called it when they were little, is good for you. Garlic, famously good for you. Great for inflammation, great for the vampires, great for your heart. It's just a superfood. Parsley, it is basically a leafy green and it's filled with trace minerals. Then we have anchovies. Everyone says we're supposed to be eating more small fish. What is an anchovy? It's one of the smallest fishes. So in that, we're hitting some omega-3s, omega-6s. We're at the bottom of the food chain. This is eco-friendly, so like hitting a lot of quality stuff there. Chili flakes, also supposed to be good for digestion, warm everything up, keep everything going. And then what do we have here? Parmesan. What is Parmesan? Fermented food. Fermented foods are very, very good for you. And so is dairy because it has protein. And the other way that this is good for you is that it's goddamn delicious and it's a pleasure to eat and it's easy. It didn't take a lot of time. It was affordable and budget friendly and it's pleasing to the eye and it's portable. Well, it's not nighttime and I'm not in front of the TV, but I am alone and I do have this bowl of pasta. This is a thrill. This is what you want to look down at and just behold. I don't care who said you're not supposed to put cheese on it. You should have it exactly the way you want to. And if you are eating alone pasta with others, just remember that the plate that you make for yourself is your tiny little microcosm. It is your getaway. It is your personal portal to your own pasta pleasure dome. Well, thanks for coming by. I need to be alone now. Hey, ya fools, this is Carla. I'm here today in my kitchen to share with you the type of love that can only be found in the bottom of a bowl of pasta fagioli. That's correct. Today I'm going to be making my classic but modernized version of pasta fazool. My original version of pasta fagioli was in Where Cooking Begins, and that recipe is based on my mom's recipe, and it was the one that I made starting from college until I wrote that book. The old version used cans of whole tomatoes, which for some people slowed down their bean cooking. This version, we switched to tomato paste. In the old version, I used pork. This version does not. The old version had a pretty straightforward sofrito. This one has a really robustly spiced one. And I also add dried shiitakes to the new version. That's the version of pasta fagioli I'm gonna show you today. It is, like all of us, smarter, better, stronger, faster, more powerful. And I think you're gonna love it as much as the original, if not more. So the first step to making the pasta fagioli, as always, is making the sofrito. I am using onion, garlic, carrot, and fennel. And this is also really typical of what would have been home-style cooking in Italy over the years, keeping the recipe sort of simple to that and true and building flavor based on how flavor would have been built in a simple kitchen is, like, to me, honors what this dish has always been. Rather than putting all the veg in at once, I'm gonna split it up just so the processor doesn't get too full. I'm gonna just trim the very end of the fennel stalk because this is gonna get chopped up so finely that it will be tender, but the very outer ring of fennel tends to be kind of like the most outside pieces of celery, just a little too tough, a little too fibrous. So that's either compost or waste. Or rabbit food. A few of you guys have rabbits, because I've mentioned rabbits in the past, and people do chime in about their bunnies. If you're feeding your bunnies vegetable snacks, please let us know in the comments. And if you don't have bunnies that you feed your veg scraps to, this is your sign to like and subscribe. Support the channel, and just comment Fazool. Fazool. The other, I would say, really genius intervention that I've made on this recipe over the years is that I now just make a really big batch of sofrito from the beginning, and I bank half of it before making the entire soup so that the next Sunday when Fazool time rolls around again, I have sofrito already made, it's in the freezer, and you basically are starting the process at the halfway point. The other thing you do want to get ahead on though is soaking the beans. I really like to soak my beans the night before. And in fact, in this household, if there isn't a bowl of beans soaking on Saturday night, people will start to get suspicious and nervous and potentially mad. The bean that I recommend for this soup is usually like a big white bean. So a cannellini bean, a Corona bean. These are called cassoulet beans. They're like a tarbay bean, but I've also made the soup with cranberry beans and with pinto beans. So you could use whatever. The other added value of soaking ahead of time is that now I have learned about salting the soaking water, which infuses the bean with seasoning before it even gets into the soup. So we're really like front loading a ton of flavor, and it truly pays off. We've got a pre-bean, which is dry, which is hard, which is like not ready for stuff, which is packed together in the gang with everybody else, you know, not opened up. And then post-soak, we have a salty, seasoned, sassy bean. She's hydrated, she's plump, she's delightful, she's bigger, and she's like ready to take on so much more. It's time to move to the stove. All right, now it's time to go to Olive Oil Village, starting off with like a healthy half cup of extra virgin olive oil. This is more than just a cooking medium. This is a flavor. This almost with the vegetables becomes a braising liquid. Okay, I think that was half a cup. Honestly, you're gonna measure out half a cup, but when you add your vegetables, if at any point this doesn't look like super saucy and juicy, the answer is olive oil. I am gonna cook this mixture covered for a lot of the time until the vegetables sweat out all of their liquid and they continue cooking down. They'll lose at least half of their volume, and at the end it's almost gonna look like a vegetable paste, like practically a puree. But for this stage of cooking, it's really just salt and pepper. Then I'm gonna throw the lid on, lower the heat to maintain a really gentle simmer, and sweat these out so I get tenderness before they take on any color. When you're in the sofrito zone, you are checking this covered situation every 5 or 10 minutes. And what you wanna make sure is that things are going gently enough to coax out all the liquid without any browning happening. So cover, tell Siri 10 more minutes, watch another scene of Below Deck, and come back and stir. Now I'm about the halfway mark, 20 to 25 minutes in. I wanna show you what it looks like. At this moment, a lot of the volume has been lost. The vegetables no longer have that super vibrant orangey color to them. And although I'm not seeing oil bubbling up yet, I am also not seeing like giant puddles of vegetable juice burbling in the bottom. You know, things are very, very tender and smushable, but not yet all the way cooked. So I'm gonna cover it again. Now it's the moment we've all been waiting for, the moment when there's some browning. There's a little bit of sticking. There's very visibly apparent oil boublage, and that is the signal that the sofrito is ready to take to the next level. I'm seeing some browned bits down there, and there's still a lot of sofrito in the pot. I'm gonna set aside the sofrito for the future before adding the spices. That way it's versatile. I could use it for the Fazool, I could use it for something else. So I really have expanded and kind of opened up to a lot more spices in the sofrito than those early days, and it just makes for like a fuller, rounder, a little bit more exciting flavor combo. I always have these spices in the cabinet, so it's not a big deal. That was oregano. This is whole fennel seed. I like to rub them together in my palms, kind of open up the flavor, crack the shell a little bit. I use a mild chili flake. This is Aleppo. You could use a smaller quantity of a crushed red chili. You could omit the spice altogether if that's not your thing. And then half a teaspoon of cumin seed. Cumin and beans are like a match made in heaven. It might not be typical to an Italian recipe, but all of these flavors are super complementary. And then I also really love the flavor of turmeric. With my beans, it plays so well with the cumin. It's great with the oregano, all of these sweet vegetables. The oil is blooming. The spices that were added, so this doesn't cook for very long before the next things go in. I have anchovies. Anchovies, you know, are really common in Italian food. They're great with beans. They are an amazing way to layer flavor without making something taste like fish. And for the volume of soup that I'm gonna make, like 6 is not too many. My original version, like my mom's version, was cans of whole tomatoes that I would kind of crush up with my hands. Now we get to big tomato payoff with tomato paste. And once the tomato goes in, I want to cook it for a couple of minutes until I see like some light caramelization for that color to go from like a very russety reddish orange more into a brick red. All right, next up, I've got my soaked white beans and the salted water that they were soaked in. So this whole thing is going in. I'm using the wooden spoon to kind of drag along the bottom of the pot, and any brown bits that were sticking, any little bits of sofrito caramelization, the tomato paste, just loosening them up and stirring them into the soup. Gorgeous, jubbly, fantastic. Next up, bay leaves. I use fresh bay leaves now. I used to only use dry. I keep the fresh ones in the fridge. If you have dry instead of fresh, use the dry ones. Dried shiitakes. You could use any kind of dried mushroom. Dried shiitakes are really easy to find in any kind of an Asian market. They are packed tons and tons of umami flavor, a lot of richness for something that is like really inexpensive. So 2 of those. The other thing that if you have in the house, you should definitely use is a parm rind. I'm gonna see if I have them. Yes, she has them, but maybe 2. You want to stir occasionally. Those like to sink to the bottom and maybe stick. So when you stir, just like look for your parm rinds. They get taken out later. And then I need a little more water to top this off. So I'm going to go back up, you know. So at this stage, what's happening here is that you're making like a really amazing pot of brothy beans. They're going to take at least an hour to get tender, probably even after being soaked. I'm gonna turn up the heat now to get up to a simmer. And as soon as that happens, lower to a gentle simmer, partially cover the pot, and let this cook. Now that I'm at a simmer, even though the bean water was seasoned, the sofrito was seasoned, I'm going to season again with salt and pepper. Not going nuts because I know that my beans have seasoning in them already, and give this a taste. They already taste pretty good. We're off to a great start. A little bit of peps. Now I'm partially covering, checking in about every half hour or so, and what I'm really checking on is bean cookery. I'm looking for a tender bean before I add my greens. All right, hopefully we have tender bean alley over here. Been cooking about 55 minutes. Again, depending on the size, the age, the condition, and just honestly, the personality of your bean. It could take a little longer. It could go a little faster. This is a giving bean because this is a very, very tender bean. And now I'm gonna add the greens. Cooking the greens can also be something, sometimes I cook them for an hour and a half. This is curly kale. You can use any kind of kale. You could also use escarole. You could use green cabbage, which I've done that was the kind of greens that I had in the house. The rest of these were pre-done. It's a good thing to do while you're waiting for your beans to cook, is just prep that kale. And this is going in. Again, it's gonna look like a big volume at the beginning, but as everybody knows, greens really cook down to nothing. So now I'm cooking the greens until they're tender and silky. The beans are gonna finish their cooking here. It's gonna be about another half hour. What a time to be alive. This pasta fagioli is almost done. I've got hot, hot pasta water. Do not cook the pasta in the soup. If you do that, your soup is gonna get thick, starchy, gummy, and weird, okay? Salting this water. Choose a small shape that has some texture. These are really cute little cavatelli, just something ridged that will catch the sauce and the texture and be like nice and fun to bite into. I think that's half a box. I always do an extra handful because I'm nervous. Okay, so while the pasta's cooking, I'm gonna do this other new step that I think does like add something without adding an ingredient, something really nice and special that makes the soup feel a little more luxurious. And that is scooping out like this much of it. I'm gonna blend that soup, get it really creamy, and then pour that creamy mixture back into the soup. Just make sure you have enough of the liquid so that you can actually get a puree going, and do this step before you add the pasta because you don't want to blend the pasta into the soup. This is really Leo's addition to the soup, my child Leo. And I really love that a family recipe like this can grow and change and become a collaboration of all the people who enjoy it and eat it. This is definitely his addition, and we love him for that. All right, so now I've got this creamy blended part going back into the soupy part. That's perfect. Just add the pasta to the soup. So now the pasta and the fagioli are together, as the intention was always there from the start. And all I need to do now, stir everything together. Last test before we go to the table. You know, asses and seeds, like it's hot soup time. I think it's perfect, in fact. I taste the heat of the Aleppo. I got all the things. My beans are good. My greens are silky. Pasta, we're ready to eat. Let's go. So even though I followed my own recipe and the soup looks exactly like it's supposed to and smells amazing, it all comes down to actually serving it and taking that first spoonful and watching everybody's face to find out if it's a good batch. And we do that every week, even though there hasn't been a bad batch. A little drizzle of olive oil at the table has become standard for us as well. It's just an exciting moment. It's a good batch. All right, even though my mother Carol is not here, this soup is here because of Carol, and we're having Carol's fried bread to go with it. Yeah, Carol's fried bread is in a video that will be right here. It's also in That Sounds So Good, so if you need to know how to fry bread in olive oil, check it out. So I hope for you that every bowl of Fazool takes you to the happiest place, the feeling of comfort, feeling of satisfaction, feeling of independence and originality, and just knowing that you're serving like the perfect Sunday soup. Hello, my hots and sweets, it's Carla, and today I'm making spaghetti with sausage and mushroom bolo. This dish came about because I was craving it on Mother's Day. And when you're me, you make your own Mother's Day dinner. I couldn't tell you why. I wanted to have like a rich sausage and mushroom pasta in the month of May, but I did and I couldn't get it out of my head. So I went and I got some sausage and I found some nice mushrooms and I came home and I made it without a recipe, winging it, feeling it, grooving. I had nice sausages, I had nice mushrooms. I have nice children, so I was feeling really nice on Mother's Day. I don't normally do this, but while we were sitting at dinner eating, Cosmo and I could not stop talking about how good it was. Like I needed his like affirmations, but repeatedly that this was like better than a normal pasta that I make that is usually pretty good. So I've made it a couple more times because as soon as I did, I was like, well, this has to be a recipe and I have to put it on the channel because I've never made anything this good ever. So I've made it 2 or 3 more times. It's never been as good as that day. So today we are chasing that high. We are trying to recreate a memory, a moment in time. It's ephemeral. Maybe we can't. Maybe we will always be searching and striving for the perfection that we once, or maybe it was just in the moment, the memory made it special and actually the pasta tastes the same, but the way I feel is different. We don't know, but we're gonna go through all of the motions. The first movement was taking the casing off of these sausages. You can tell by the color, I have 2 hots and 1 sweet. That's about 12 ounces. Usually a link is 4 ounces. You can do all sweet, you can go all hot, you can do 2 sweet and 1 and half, but this mix is right for me. I have this big, nice wide skillet. You could use a Dutch oven. I do think something wide is better for this because the mushrooms add a lot of moisture, and sort of driving off that moisture will happen faster in a wide skillet, but you could totally use a Dutch oven. So it's preheating. I want it really, really hot when the sausages hit the pan because I want them to right away sort of start to form a crust. And I have my potato masher out because it is one of the great things for breaking the sausage up into pieces. A lot of recipes say use a wooden spoon. It's like a da-da-da-da-da-da. So we're gonna do this. 2 tablespoons of olive oil going in first. You need something on the pan so that there isn't just stickage and to create that nonstick barrier. And if your pan is properly preheated, when you tilt your pan to coat it with oil, you should see it break into that like shimmering pattern. I love that trick. I didn't used to do that. I didn't used to have a potato masher, which was weird because it is kind of a basic and useful tool. So we love that. We love that also for guacamole. It's fantastic. Besides the potato situation, it's just a good thing to have. That broke everything up into like these nice little pieces really quickly. There's going to be browning. While that is happening, I'm going to take that 6 or 8 minutes while I kind of build up a nice crust on the sausage to tear my mushrooms. The first time I went to just a regular old, like one of those nice big delis, and they had really nice oyster mushrooms. Hot tip, and I've learned this from both my restaurant time and from working with food stylists. Does everybody know what FIFO means in the restaurant lingo? First in, first out. That means that the thing that is the oldest, if you've made 2 batches of stock, say, for the restaurant, and you're putting the new batch away, you always put it behind the batch that you want to use first. You wouldn't put the new batch in front because then people take the new one first, the old one goes bad. So this is a rule that is not only used in restaurants, but in all of your supermarkets. Like if you're looking in the front of the produce and there's mushrooms and then there's mushrooms, that tray keeps going. Maybe it's not very nice to the people who own these stores, but if you go to the very back of that tray, you're gonna get the most recent mushrooms. That's what I did. There was a beautiful cluster of oyster mushrooms back there. I took it, I brought it home, and that's what I used. The second time I made this dish, I could not get those nice oyster mushrooms, but I was like, whatever, this should work, let's spin it. So I used Baby Bella's. Instead of tearing them, I put them in my food processor and I chopped them up into kind of roughly chopped pieces, and that made more of a texture that like became one with the sausage, but it wasn't as good. So we've gone back to a cluster mushroom. If you can't get oysters, look for hanshimeji, also known as beech. These are white beech, and they also come in brown. They look like cartoon character of mushroom. You could use white beech or brown beech. If the idea of having sausage browning while you're prepping mushrooms feels like too much or overwhelming, or you don't like the way to juggle that, that is fine. Just get your sausages out of the casing, then tear your mushrooms, and then you could just go to the pan, because my back is turned, but I'm listening to what's happening. There's juicy sizzling, and then there's dry, cracky sizzling, and right now it's like there's both. So I know that browning is happening because that's the crackly sound, but it also sounds juicy in the bottom. This is the skill you pick up in a galley kitchen. I've been cooking in this kitchen for 25 years. But it's good to know what it should sound like. Crackly. Anywho, look at all these mushrooms. So there's 1.5 pounds of mushrooms in the recipe because essentially the cluster of mushrooms I picked up that day weighed 1.5 pounds, and I didn't want to use a partial, so I used it all, and it was the right amount. Sometimes just it's like, you know, the magical force around the cooking, if it's like a witchy energy or if it's just like sometimes things just really work out. I have high hopes for today. A lot of times when I have made a recipe for the channel, I've cooked it 2 or 3 times at home, written up the recipe, and then we come in to shoot it. And like, it happens very often that the most delicious version is the one that I make on camera, which is odd. That's what, that's what I want to see happen. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. I think it's important to talk about mental health openly and share our experiences. I try to share mine. I encourage my children to share with me, and I'm definitely talking about mental health all day, every day with my friends. From managing stress to working through the daily difficulties of life, therapy is a safe place for working through your feelings. Therapy for me is such a safe space that I like to put 2 speakers outside the door and put on white noise so I can really say and do whatever I need to in there. You can have sessions with your BetterHelp therapist through phone calls, video chats, or messaging. You can also slot this in at any time that is convenient for you and your schedule. BetterHelp's extensive network includes over 30,000 therapists. You just fill out a questionnaire detailing what you're struggling with, and BetterHelp will use that information to match you with a therapist who specializes in specifically those struggles. You should feel comfortable with your therapist, and BetterHelp also really sets you up for success there. Join the over 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. Taking care of your mental health is a crucial part of your overall well-being. Mental health is health. Click the link in the video description or just navigate over to betterhelp.com/Carla Lalli music. Not only does using that link support this channel, it will also get you 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. That could be 4 sessions, going at once a week like I do. Thank you again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get back to that sauce. It's more crackly, so I think we have browning. Let's go look at it. And at that point, the mushrooms are gonna go in with a little bit more oil. They're gonna absorb some of the sausage renderings, but they also are very thirsty and dry, so they're gonna be very greedy with that available oil, and we have to add more. Oh yes, oh yes indeed. I added my oil, I'm tossing. You really wanna see that your mushrooms have been coated with oil. If your sausages were a little less fatty than mine, or say that you chose to use turkey sausage for some crazy reason, you might need a little more olive oil. So if the mushrooms look like they're still dry once they've been tossed through, just add another glug of olive oil, or else you will get like charring, sticking, dry, chewy. And we don't want that. We want like silky, unctuous, caramelized energy. So the sausage is already seasoned in the casing, but with this volume of mushroom, you also have to season the mushroom. So just gonna add salt and pepper here before putting on the lid. You can see it and you can hear it that the mushrooms, as they soften a little bit right here, are releasing some liquid, and that you'll also feel on the pan because it's helping to lift those brown bits. We're in our like steaming lid era still, which has been going on the channel for a while. So I want to capture high heat, a little bit of pressure, build up steam. That's gonna really force the mushrooms to quickly release a lot of their liquid and start to cook down. And to achieve that, all you need is a handy little lid. So I'm gonna put this on and lower the heat a tad and let the mushrooms go. 3, 2, 1, release. In this 10 to 14 minute window, while I have mushroom and sausage intermingling happening, new team getting formed, I'm going to thinly slice 4 cloves of garlic. I think I went thinly sliced because when I made this, it was for Cosmo, and he's gotten really much better about his little food aversion things, but he doesn't love to bite into like a chunk. So I went thin, hoping that the garlic would pretty much disintegrate. But if you want bigger pieces, that is totally fine. It's gonna have plenty of time to simmer, but that's why I went with the thin slice. Mushroom to me, sausage, I don't know. I wanted something oniony. Also, again, I think I was thinking about Cosmo because he loves like a caramelized brown onion, and maybe it makes up for the fact that he does not love garlic, and so I threw a good amount in there. If you didn't have shallots, as Andrea Nguyen on my Substack famously said, nothing bedevils her as a recipe developer as much as the shallot because of the size differential. I don't know, should we weigh them now that we're talking about it? Maybe we should. Trimmed weight of these shallots is 7.5 ounces. A medium to large white onion, untrimmed, 13. Fine. Try to find an 8-ounce onion. I don't know what to say. Okay, again, you could just slice these crosswise. I went for a dice because I wanted the little pieces of shallot to also melt into the sauce because there's that ground meat texture. They will disappear more if they're diced. If you feel like slicing, slice. If you feel like busting out the mini chopper, just toss them in there and do like a small chop. Oh wow, I got all the way to this one before I started crying. It's pretty good. My knife is sharp. So that was a 10-minute check also on the sausage mushroom. It's over low heat, and because it's covered, you just have to open that lid up and check every 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna save my mushrooms and my little shallot butts for stock. That is all the prep that needs to happen. This is what you want it to look like after the mushrooms have done their thing with the sausage. So there should be some browning on the mushrooms, which I am definitely seeing, and that most of the moisture has cooked off, and instead of it feeling liquidy in the bottom, the mushrooms are almost frying in that fat that's been rendered. There's actually less olive oil in this recipe than like my typical pasta recipe, and that's because of the sausage fat. So if it feels like there is an oil, add it, because when you add the shallot and the garlic, they need also that fat in the pan in order to soften properly. You don't just want them to steam in like mushroom vapor. So they need to have a little fat to coat and also to cook. And the reason I put the shallot and the garlic in so late in the game here is because I don't want to have to worry about them browning at a faster rate than the mushrooms. So it's just safer and easier to have them in this small dice, to add them by themselves together where I can kind of be in control. I love to be in control in case that was not apparent. So now I'm going to season just with salt, actually, because I have the spice from the spicy sausage and I already added pepper. So yeah, it does smell delicious from the garlic and the shallot that I just added. They already look translucent. I just don't want like raw onion flavor. So I'm gonna go a minute or two longer. So now I'm going to add tomato paste, which the first time I made this, I had intended to do, and then I I just had it out on the counter. So I ended up adding it like after the wine, but this is the right time to add it. So this is a tablespoon. You want to cook your tomato paste out to get rid of that like raw flavor. Normally you can see the color change in the tomato paste, and that's a really good visual cue. In this case, there's so many brown things already in the pan that it's a little harder to tell. Just toss it around, get it in there. It should take a couple of minutes. You want to see that orangey color from the tomato paste kind of coating your mushrooms. You might be able to smell the difference, but this is a rare time that I'm gonna just say to cook it for a couple minutes without telling you what you're looking for first. Because I have like cooking wine, adding half a cup. You could use white vermouth here. You could use water. You could use chicken stock if you don't cook with alcohol. I think also you could use red wine, but I am going with white, about half a cup. This is gonna add some brighter flavors. It's going to add a little bit of acidity. It's going to add some body, and it's also going to kind of reboost like moisture into the pan, which is important because this is the last step before I just let the sauce simmer for 25 or 30 minutes. It takes like 5 seconds, but you're gonna cook until that wine is almost entirely evaporated, and you know, a lot of it is absorbed by the mushrooms, and then they'll kind of give it back to the pan as they simmer. So that is really quick. I have really high hopes for this. It looks, I don't remember what it looked like on Mother's Day, but I think it looked like this. Okay, so now a little water. I didn't do this initially, but I think it's a good little safeguard. Like, you're gonna look at this and be like, it's not really saucy. It doesn't look like a ragu. How is this a ragu? So I'm adding another healthy glug, just water. So around a 1/4 cup. It could be a little more. You might need a little bit more as this simmers, but it's really just an insurance policy against anything sticking, because now I'm covering the pot again and I'm gonna let this simmer for 25 or 30 minutes just to like bring everything together. There's very few ingredients, so giving it a little minute to like do its thing. That means that you don't have to bring your water up to a boil until the sauce is already at a simmer. We're about at the 25-minute mark. This is a great time to check the sauce, give it a taste, and also bring my pot of water to a boil. Mmm, delicious. The other thing to check for before you bring your water up is that you haven't dried out. All along the way, whether you need a splash of oil, splash of water. My pan looks great, so splash it. Great texture. I think this sauce is just about done. So I'm gonna get my water going and generously salt like I always do. Dropping my gorgeous spaghetti. This has a 10 to 11 minute cook time. So I'm gonna set a timer for like 8.5 so it can finish cooking in the sauce. Pasta check. We're at like 9 minutes. Oof. They're ready. Lots of times you see me going with a spider from the pasta pot to the sauce. Spaghetti is like hard and annoying and it takes a bunch of trips. So I'm gonna scoop my pasta water first, and this is always an option for everybody if you see me using the spider. It's better to have more pasta water than you need. So I have like 2.5 cups. Put that over here and dump my pasta. My sauce is still over low heat, very lightly simmering. So I'm gonna show you up here. There should be enough residual heat in the pan. If there isn't, I'll put it over low heat. Noonie's directly into your pot. It's gonna need liquid, absolutely, for sure, no question about it. And like, listen, I put Bolo in the recipe name for funsies. This is not a true bolognese. A true bolognese, it doesn't have sausage and it doesn't have mushrooms, and it cooks for like 5 hours. So I'm gonna go with like a whole cup just to start. And this tracks all the pastas you've seen me make. We're tossing, we're saucing, we're glossing. We need more water, amazingly. So once I see like a nice amount of available liquid, because I want a sauce that has thickened enough to coat the strands, but that there should be some available sauce in the bottom of your bowl, but not like we're not swimming. And we also need there to be enough liquid for the cheese to emulsify properly. So I have some coarsely grated parm. Did this in the blender. We love blender parm. Adding about 1/2 cup. You want extra for serving. And rather than just putting parm on top, the cheese adds obviously a layer of flavor. It's salty, but it will help bring that like elastic sort of sheen and glossiness to the sauce. Delish. So the cheese is definitely melted. It took on this like other shine. This is a coarse pasta. It's like a nice artisanal, you could feel the rough texture of the noodle. And with pastas like that aren't polished, they just absorb more liquid because they have more surface area. So it's taking a little more water, which is fine. No problems. It's not gonna dilute, it's just helping the sauce be the right consistency. Checking for salt and pepper, but also checking that the pasta finished cooking, because it was like very al dente and now it's just al dente. I think this tastes great. Very happy. I hope it's I hope it's delicious. I don't know if it ever will be. Will it be as good? We don't know. You know, sometimes it seems weird, like why 3 sausages and not 4? Like they come 4 to a package. But I'm happy with the decisions that I made. You saucy little sucker. A little extra sauce. I'm gonna do a squeeze of lemon. This is real nice. Right at the end. A little extra parm. Shout out to all the mothers who make their own Mother's Day dinner. It's like lots of nice things happen to me during the day, but then at some point it's like, oh yeah, I have to make dinner. That's a good bite. Okay, it's really good. Is it as good? It's different. You'll never make 2 plates the same. It's really good though. This is better than all the ones I made when I was developing the recipe. I don't know if it's as good as the first time I made it. But the great news for you is that you haven't made it yet. So the first time you make it, it will be this magical version. But you don't have to be inside my brain because I actually put it on paper.
Do you go like one at a time and then, or like do you both?
Oh God, see, his is really good. What makes a pantry pasta? I think it should be something that you can just make whenever. The other thing that I think makes a pantry pasta is it should be really fast. So this whole thing is like a 25-minute experience. Today I am making caramelized onion and tuna pasta. And later in the episode, I will be bringing in a secret fitness expert who's going to judge my macros. So I've got a red onion, any color onion will do. And I'm just gonna thinly slice it. I put my skillet over medium heat to warm it up while I do this prep, which is a good habit to get into, especially when you're cooking in stainless steel. If your pan is nice and hot before you add the oil, it basically is non-stick. That's something I've learned about stainless steel in the past year. There are different versions of this pasta. Some of them are tomato-y. I feel like the version my mom made also had canned tomatoes or tomato paste, but I went for more of like a white sauce that is salty and briny. There's chovies and the tuna is salty. The onion gets nice and caramelized and sweet and jammy, and then we've got our egg. So it's really everything. And also the first time I made it, I had no herbs in the house. I didn't even have a lemon in the house. So I didn't put herbs in, missed them a little bit, and I just used vinegar instead of the lemon. It was actually really good. We need to improvise, guys. We always need to be spinning it. We just need to be thinking, why do I add a lemon? Because it is a little bit sour and acidic. Other things are also sour and acidic. We shall roll. Oh, what did I just do? Oh, well. I forgot that I was slicing and I started dicing. We're not going to worry about it. See, if that happens to you, just go back to slicing. Okay, 1 onion. Slice diced. Next, olive oil. 1/4 cup. Some of my pastas have 1/3 of a cup, so I feel that adding 1/4 cup is being mindful of my macros. We'll find out later if that's true. This pasta also, I don't know, it could be 2 people, it could be 3. I don't think it stretches to 4. But when we find out how the numbers stack up, we might want to revisit. Salt and pepper to get these guys going. These started to sweat right away. I already got a tiny bit of color because the oil got hot right away. I just want to start to see them release some of their juices, see that combination of oil and juice in the bottom of the pan. And then, I don't know, this started like a few months ago and I am still firmly in my steaming era. I've been covering pans left and right like nobody's business and really leaning into the incredible power of steam, which is, among the heat methods, top 2, I would say. High heat, high moisture. So fast and forgiving. We love that. As a motto, it's great. Okay, so now that those are going, I'm actually gonna steal this because my water is boiling. Covering that, I want this to go quickly, but I also want to bring the best out of the onions. This will jumpstart the caramelization process by getting them to release their liquid so that then we can build color for sweetness. While those are steaming and my water's already hot, I think this is a terrific time to call in our fitness expert. Everyone, it's our fitness expert. How are you doing today?
Oh, that's good.
I have my onions going.
I'm making rice.
You are making rice?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, no white food. And that's like rice, the potatoes, the bread. And I feel like I was brought up on that. So I thought that like cutting the carbs was a good thing. And then I made pasta and I told you that it had like 5 or 6 ounces of pasta in it for one serving. And you were like, that's good.
Yeah, it's great. There's nothing wrong with carbs.
Did everybody hear that? There is nothing wrong with carbs.
And you should rephrase that to be positive. Carbs are great.
Carbs are great. You have watched a lot of the episodes.
I have.
What's like one thing that maybe stands out in my cooking to you?
Big fan of fat.
Big fan of fat, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because fat is good. Carbs are great. Fat is good. So we sent you this recipe. Walk us through it. So if the 3 things that are the macros, which this is the part, like I'm like, it's enough for me to count the protein, but I'm also supposed to be counting the carbs and the fat. So let's just say from a protein perspective, how is this dinner?
I need to see the size of your tuna cans.
You can see them. Yeah, they're jars.
Oh, okay.
But and they're packed in oil, of course.
So actually, you're probably hitting more protein than I thought for this. Pushing closer to 100 for the entire recipe.
Oh, for the entire recipe. Okay, so if it's for 2 people, then that means one person's getting 50 grams.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
Carbs.
Carbs. It's decently high in carbs, but most people's diets are going to be higher in carbs.
Great.
Unless they're purposely cutting them out, which is another conversation. But
Oh, yeah, we're not doing that. Are you doing that?
am I doing that?
Yeah.
No.
We're winning at carbs. Our protein is absolutely incredible. And then, do you like that extra egg in there?
Great. Eggs are awesome.
Love an egg.
Whole eggs are both fats and proteins. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
How do you feel about the fat in this dish?
It's a lot.
What's a lot?
What you have in there. And your tuna is packed in fat already. So there's a lot of oil in there.
What are we saying about this dish?
I'm saying, do you need to pour 1/4 of a cup of olive oil in the pan first?
Yes. Turns out I do, because look at how good those onions look.
Amazing, but like, could they look just as good with half of that? Like 2 tablespoons of olive oil? No?
They would look good, but possibly there could be charring. We don't want the pan to get dry.
Got it. But aren't you a big fan of like the steam method?
I am. We're steaming.
Magical. If you were to buy tuna in water, you'd be pulling away 24 grams of fat out of your dish.
I would also be crying. Like it's possible I would cry.
But you have 1/4 cup in the pan already.
Okay, so luscious, beautiful onions and like watered out tuna.
Sure, but tuna just needs a chance to become magical.
So true. It's really so true.
I'll make it, and I'll show you how I do it for fat and things. And I'll send it to you, and then you can do with that what you want.
So Ross, as a fan of the channel, it's just so wonderful to have you as a contributor to the channel, let me just say. And you just have great shoulders, and you're a great person.
Thanks.
Conversation with Ross. I'm not going to let him olive oil shame me. But it is making me think, because these are very juicy and they're gorgeous. I think we should just let Ross cook it with less fat, and then he can tell us how it is. These are now really soft. They haven't taken any color on. I do want to let them get a little bit brown, but I'm going to do that in stages. So I'm going to drop these 3 anchovies in. What I love about that conversation is that all of these blocks of energy, the carbs, the protein, and the fat, like they're all essential, and we need to eat all of them. I just feel validated right now. Okay, so my anchovies are in, my garlics are in, and this is when you can add some crushed red pepper. Recipe calls for 1/2 teaspoon. I'm gonna add just a little smidge extra. You don't have to use chili if it's not your thing, but I do think that with the sweet onions, a little bit of heat, the like saltiness and the deliciousness of the tuna and the anchovy, it's just a nice flavor to have in there. This stage of cooking is about getting a little bit of color on the garlic and at the same time start to build up a little of that caramelization on the onion. But in the meantime, I'm going to cook these eggs in the pasta water, and I want to cook these to jammy. So that's in between 6 and 7 minutes. If you go to 7, your yolk will be like a little bit more set. If you're closer to 6, it will be more runny. So if you want to break into that egg and have the yolk like really run through the pasta, air on the side of a little bit less. Okay, so eggs have been in for a couple of minutes and I'm starting to see some nice light browning on the garlic and on the edges of some of the onions. So this is a good time to put in the capers. I like them whole because I like to bite in and just get that nice pop of like real briny caper flavor. And these I'm gonna cook until they start to fry a little bit in the oil and the onions are more caramelized. This sauce is gonna be done before your pasta, and it's kind of written that way and it's built that way. So this is just gonna be done and waiting for you and hanging out. This is gorgeous, jammy, frying, caramelizing. I am gonna cover it for safekeeping, killing the heat, putting this on a cool burner so it will finish cooking, be nice and calm, warm, not taking on any more color. Eggs are ready. Straight into the ice bath. This will stop the cooking and I can peel them ahead of time. We haven't really done this before, but I'm gonna weigh out the amount of pasta I need for this recipe. I'm going with a little mezzi rigatoni, which is like rigatoni but half the length. This will work with anything. I do like a short tubular pasta for a sauce like this because some of the little bits of tuna are gonna like find their way inside the tube, and then we have magical tunnels that have like caramelized onion and maybe a caper pops in there, and they're just fun to eat. But this would totally work with a spaghetti, a thicker pasta. It would work with a twisted shape like gemelli or fusilli. Okay, that's 9. Wait, let's look at what 2 ounces is. It's like so upsetting. That's 2 ounces of pasta. That's the saddest thing I've ever seen. I get it, but like nobody eats pasta like that. So I need 3. I guess we need a couple for the tasters, right? Okay, so I've got my parsley. I think I just said handful. Basil would be really nice with this. Chives would be really nice with this. Scallion, greens if you had some of that. And I'm not gonna go crazy thin because I want a little texture. Note to self, ask Rossi next time. He mentioned vegetables. Is the parsley a vegetable? Maybe we just have to have a nice big salad with this because vegetables are free. Nutritional yeast vinaigrette, however, then we're in a like counting the fat again situation. You guys know I'm never gonna be a person who's gonna count my fat, right? Just one thing at a time. I'm counting my protein. I got 117 grams of protein in the other day. I was really proud of myself. I did have a horrible stomach ache. Note to the audience, does eating a lot of protein give you a horrible stomach ache, or is this something I have to like grow into and get used to? Also, protein powder for people who are having a hard time getting all the protein from the food sources. Does protein powder make you constipated? Question for the audience. Please let us know. Okay. Parsley's done. Peel some eggs. When you're peeling a jammy egg, just make a note to yourself before you start. Like, it's not a hard-boiled egg. They're a little bit more delicate. And I always try to bonk the bottom because that's where the air hole is. Fun fact that I'm sure everybody already knows, the fresher the egg, the harder it is to peel. Because this membrane is like fused really tight when they're super fresh. And over time, a little bit of air builds up. The eggs, you can either put them directly onto the pasta. They're cold, but they're gonna sit out now, so they'll come to room temperature. Or if you're using a spider to scoop out your pasta, and you still have your hot pasta water there, you can put the egg in for like 30 seconds just to take the chill off before you add it to the pasta. I'm gonna check my noodle, but we're a minute or two shy of the package, which is where we like to be because we're gonna cook this to finish it in the sauce. This is a perfect example of being able to see the little ring of uncooked pasta in the center, which is one of the ways you can tell that it's al dente. I really recommend a spider. We use it all the time. These ones are in the gift guide. They cost like $6. You'll use it every day. Whoopsie, I already had a loss. It's a good thing I counted those couple extra rigatoni because one of them already went over. I think I'm in a 10-inch. Could have probably been in a 12-inch. But making it work, tossing that pasta water through. Got my beautiful caramelized onions. Coating, gorgeousness, beautiful. I'm gonna put my eggies back in and add the tuna. So you want to do this at the end. You know, you want warm tuna. I don't necessarily need hot tuna. Do you know what I mean? And if this weirds you out, just think about tuna casserole. This is better. I once made tuna casserole for my kids because I thought it was like a thing that you should do as a parent. We were all so grossed out. I'm taking my eggs out. They've had about 30 seconds. Yet another use of the spider today. And I want a little more water, but I'm gonna turn the heat off. Gonna add my lemon juice. I think lemon's really important, but a splash of any vinegar that you have lying around will also do the trick. And I'm gonna add the parsley. I think I should stir based on what's happened up to this point. I just need to taste. Oh my God, health food is amazing. I love how healthy I am now. It's just great. Just food is great. Food is the best. I love food so much. All right, so let's really try to divide this into 2 portions. You could do this with scallops. You could do it with clams. You could do it with mussels. It would be very, very similar. Oh, look at what you get when you're healthy. Because carbs are great, because Ross said so, and I trust him. Did you see that guy's biceps? How could you have biceps like that and not be trustworthy? The piece de resistance. Look, you like nestle that perfect little egg. This is me not drizzling olive oil over the top. I'm doing these things so that we don't need olive oil. Cannot overestimate the importance of the al dente pasta for this because you have your tunas kind of shreddy. Your egg is gorgeous, jammy, succulent, bouncy, all of those things. You've got sweet caramelized onions and you've got the brightness of the little bites of caper and the parsley. So your pasta really needs to have like structural integrity. Oh my God, it's so good. It's perfect. I just wish you all to just build muscle and nourish yourselves and lean into it. Rely on the pantry, rely on the jarred and tinned fishes, and get yourself a Ross because it's been one of the greatest things that I ever did. Friends, we have come to a pivotal and slightly bittersweet moment on the channel. And that is because today I am making pasta alla Gricia, which is the 4th and final installment of the 4 pastas of Rome. You saw me put my spin on cacio e pepe. I also did my little version of Carla Bonara instead of carbonara. And that left us with amatriciana, which I've done, and pasta alla Gricia, which I have not done. Pasta alla Gricia has 5 ingredients, 6 if you count salt. It is cacio e pepe plus guanciale. It is carbonara minus the egg. Black pepper is a very fundamental and foundational flavor as well. But the first thing I'm gonna do is cut up the guanciale. Famously, guanciale is not pancetta, and neither one of them are bacon, okay? They're similar in that they are cured pork products. Guanciale comes from the jowl, AKA the cheek. This tenderoni piece Maybe if you have a dog, you like to squeeze their little jowls. That is where guanciale comes from. It is seasoned on the outside, but you don't want to put that in your sauce. I've watched some videos. People are keeping the coating, but I think it gets bitter and kind of weird and can be a very tough texture. I'm going to trim that away. So it's fermented because it's cured. That's part of the curing process. It has some funk to it for sure. I think pancetta just is like a little sweeter, but guanciale is the most classic choice you can make. Guanciale, if you can't get it, go get some pancetta. And while you're there, get a big hunk and just cut it into smaller pieces and keep it in the freezer in between your alla Gricia moments. Because it really is a pantry pasta at the end of the day. Cheese, cured meat, pepper, pasta. That's a pantry pasta if there ever was one. You'll notice a big chunk of this is just fat. And that's just great because this is delicious fat. This is cured fat. This is fat that has been seasoned on the outside. Those seasonings have permeated into the fat. Italians love fat. Famously, lardo is just fat, and they slice it and they put it on toast. So I'm gonna cut my guanciale, not too small and not too big. So I think I'm gonna go a little bit smaller than how I cut it for a matriciana. And I really don't want bacon bits. There should be, and I've heard some people say, who wants to bite into a big chunk of fat? Well, I do, actually. It's delicious, and it has a texture of its own. So I'm trying to get pieces that have a little bit of meat, some of the fat, a little bit more meat, and I don't want it super crispy. You want it to have that nice chew where it's like starting to get crisp, but it isn't crisp. And so that's what we're gonna be going for in the pan. If you don't use guanciale, you couldn't really call it alla Gricia, strictly speaking. But you could make it with pancetta and it would be very, very close. But it's not. The classic dishes of Rome, they're kind of like the 10 Commandments. They're really like etched into stone there. The fat's gonna render and that's gonna become the base of the sauce. And then that fat ultimately is gonna emulsify with the pasta water and the cheese to make our beautiful creamy sauce. It's not gonna feel greasy. It's not gonna feel like that kind of fatty, but it does have fat in it. So if Ross were here and we were talking about it, I don't think he would say very much to me. I think he would say, you cook with a lot of fat. And I'm like, and you're 5'4". Do we want to just throw facts at each other? Like, what are we even doing here? It is what it is. Like, how long am I going to be on Earth? I'm over the part of like my life where we didn't do things because we thought we were saving it up for something else. We're leaning in now. So like any bottle of wine that's in the house is fair game. We're not saving anything for special occasions. Fat comes, we eat the fat. We feel great. We also go to the gym. Sometimes we eat 6 cups of greens. It's all good. The most famous pecorino in Italy. I'm not really gonna read it that way. The most famous pecorino in Italy is name controlled. You can't call it this. Name controlled pecorino romano. Usually just called Romano. Weird. I've just been calling it pecorino. Only a few companies still make genuine Romano. Genuine Romano being Romano made in the province of Rome. Hence the name. Only Locatelli, Fulvi, Brunelli, and Lopez produced a genuine article. Fascinating. We have Fulvi today. So this is the Fulvi, I believe. And this is a not as long aged pecorino, which is another sheep's milk cheese. We just thought we might taste them side by side. When I say we, I mean me. There are other people here. Everybody say hey.
Hey. Hey.
And some of the people did not say hey. This is Tuscan. Exactly. Softer texture, pretty creamy, nutty, not crazy salty. That would be great on like a cheese plate. So has its place, totally delicious. Romano on the other hand, wow, very salty. Doing that thing on the sides of your tongue where it's like, sour, sharp, aged, pungent, delicious, very different. Pecorino is the big umbrella category, and then like Toscano, Sardo, and Romano are pecorinos from these different regions, and we're in Rome, so it's got to be Romano. And if you go Sardo, then I'm sorry. Sardo to you. You know what I mean? And then I just feel really confident about my whole thing of saying it has to be a certain way, but then also saying that you can use parm. I feel good about it. If you're Roman, please sound off in the comments. Well, originally in the recipe that I wrote for today, it's 50-50. Now I feel like a tiny bit of reading up on Romano has made me have a very high regard for it. So maybe we'll go 3 parts Romano, 1 part parm, right? Respecting our elders. In another audacious move, I'm gonna blend the cheese in the blender, which none of the Roman Empire guys were doing. And so you can make blender parm in the blender. You can make blender parm in the Cuisinart. We did a little short about blender parm. You can also just grate it, but don't use a microplane. The only trick with blender parm is don't blend for too long because you don't want the cheese to heat up and then melt. So pretty fine. Great. So toothpick, one of my favorite tools for blender corners. This is a chopstick, not a toothpick. Jesus Christ. It's been a long day. Imagine if you had to use a chopstick as a toothpick. You would be a giant.
Or like a great white shark.
Oh my God, great white sharks are smashing chopsticks to get the little bones out. All right, so that was Romano, and now I'm gonna do a hunk of parm. I think I got, what did I buy here? It's a little over a pound. The way that you know that you're getting real parm is it's gonna be stamped on the outside, Parmigiano Reggiano. If you don't see the stamp, you don't got Parmigiano Reggiano. So domestic Parmesan that's made in the US is not Parmigiano Reggiano. I'll tell you this, the texture of the pecorino is definitely wetter. Like it sticks to itself a little bit more, but when you buy really nice parm that's just been cut like this, it's gonna be very moist, very fluffy. So cheeses are done. If you're not a pepper person, you don't enjoy black pepper, you don't like pepper, this is not the dish for you. You should just make like, you should make Alfredo. That's what you should do, because that's butter and parm, which would be great. This is Malabar pepper. And we just thought, since I had multiple peppers in the house, let's taste a couple of peppers. What am I looking for in the pepper? I don't know. I've never done this before. Ooh, spicy. It's like Big Red. The gum. It's hot on the back, spicy on the delish. That's Malabar. That's from India. I want to guess that this is Telecherry because like I definitely went to Calusian's and I bought a giant bag of pepper. So we think it's Telecherry, and I want to see what it tastes like. Why am I doing that with this? Oh, much more brittle, more earthy, way more earthy. Tastes like the way wood shavings smell. Definitely prefer the Malabar. Cosmo, today you have a simple job. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. You're just gonna taste and react.
Good.
And you're gonna truly react.
I'm gonna ace this test.
I want you to do them in the order I did. So I had this one first. Okay. So just tell us what you're tasting. 2 and 2.
It tastes like cinnamon. And like cardamom.
Cardamom.
Cardamom. It tastes like pepper.
Right. I mean, I think that's fair.
Is this one gonna hurt me?
No. Isn't the texture so different? What is that texture like?
It's like hollow. You know hot tamales?
Hot tamales? Yeah.
It kind of tasted like that.
Did you get a smoky? Yeah. So which one do you want in the peppery pasta?
In peppery pasta?
Yeah.
What's
Guanciale.
Oh, I want the smoky one.
You do. Fascinating. So, young Cosmo, I respect his opinion so much. He chose the more woody, smoky, the more brittle one. I really feel this higher register spice. This one's a little bit fruitier. This one had that like really Saigon cinnamon kind of flavor. That's my choice. And I do appreciate his opinion, but it was not the final opinion. I need 2 teaspoons. I definitely have at least 2 teaspoons there. Before this pork fat hits the pan, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsor, BetterHelp. As we get further and further into the year, it is easier and easier to slip into autopilot and stop prioritizing yourself and your mental health. That's why it's important to have someone to talk to, and BetterHelp can do that. BetterHelp's extensive network includes over 30,000 therapists. You will fill out a questionnaire going through what you're struggling with, and then BetterHelp will use those answers to pair you with a professional who specializes in what you're struggling with. You can meet with your therapist through phone calls, video calls, or messaging. It's totally up to you. If you're looking for mental health support or just someone to talk to, click the link in the video description or go to betterhelp.com/Carla Lalli Music. Not only does clicking on that link help this channel and thus help my mental health, but it will also get you 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. I've got a big pot over here that is big enough to hold the pasta and the sauce at the end. And I'm gonna add just a couple of teaspoons of olive oil. Olive oil is not a primary flavor in this pasta. It's really just to get the guanciale rendering. And then before the pan is even hot, you don't have to wait. And in fact, it's better if you don't wait. I'm just gonna get the guanciale over to the pot to start rendering gently. Now that the guanciale is in there, I'm gonna cook it, I'm gonna check on it, I'm gonna babysit it, I'm gonna watch it, and I want it to cook until most of the fat is rendered, but it's still chewy, but parts are starting to get brown, right in that sweet spot. All right, so this is exactly what I was looking for. A little bit of browning, about half of the volume has been lost. They're still like malleable, so delicious. So I'm gonna take these out. They'll go back in at the end. Okay, so you can see the gorgeous renderings, the little bit of browning, some of that like pork crispiness is now in this oil, and this oil is going to be foundational, super important, absolutely central part of the sauce itself. So it's good to let this cool down for a minute or so. You don't want to see any smoke coming off of it because if the oil is too hot, you'll burn the pepper, and there's no way to go back from that. You'd have to start over with new guanciale. So 2 teaspoons. And this is another layer. A lot of recipes are not going to tell you to do this, but toasting the black pepper like any other spice in the fat is going to bloom the spice. And because the black pepper is really important, it's one of the 4 flavors, if you don't count the pasta, of the dish, then like anything that we can do to maximize its flavor and its deliciousness, like let's do it. We have the fat, it's already hot. I'm just gonna stir this around, but it smells super peppery. So this is gonna sit until the pasta is ready, and then it's all gonna happen right here in this mixture. I have boiling salted pasta water. So I've got this beautiful spaghettoni, which is like a thick spaghetti. I just want to point out this brand is Monograno Felicetti, but my favorite part is it just says matte because it's not polished. But every time I look at it, I'm like, it's Matt's spaghettoni. Shout out to all the Matts out there. You'll see this dish, alla Gricia, a lot made with rigatoni. Same with carbonara, but you also see carbonara with spaghetti or rigatoni. So I felt like, well, I'm already doing this thing with the parm and the pecorino that I took from the carbonara. So I felt like a thick spaghetti was within my rights. That guanciale pepper mixture has been off. The pasta is done, very al dente, and I'm gonna get it into the fat and then start tossing. Okie dokie. So important, just make sure that your pasta is well coated with the fat. So I also scooped out some pasta water. If you're not transferring straight from your pasta pot into your sauce pot, just scoop out some water before you drain. So I just want to get the water like everywhere because I'm using Matt's matte pasta. It is going to absorb quite a bit of liquid. So this might take a little bit more pasta water than you think. So it's starting to look a little creamy already. So it's like opaque, it's not totally clear. There's fat, there's water, they're starting to get to know each other. This is our Romano. And originally it was half a cup of each, but I'm gonna go a little bit more Romano because we're in Rome. When in Rome, when in Romano, maybe half of the amount. Tossing, stirring, agitating. You can be moving your pan back and forth. You can be moving your body around. You can be shimmering and shifting and hustling and bustling. I'm shagoosing. I'm vamoosing. I want to see this cheese start to melt. So some of it is melting. It's creamier. It definitely needs more water. So that was already like a cup and a half that I've added. So when the recipe says toss energetically, adding pasta water as needed until a luscious, gorgeous, glossy sauce thickens enough to coat the pasta, like I'm gonna start sweating pretty soon. This should sound like the Roman carriages, the steed running towards the city gates. Right? We gotta go, we gotta do it, and it's happening. It's all happening. So all of the Romano is in, except for a little bit more. So just do that and then finish off that second half cup with parm. Maybe do half, a little more water. Again, my pasta is Matt Damon, Matthew McConaughey. It's really beautiful now. Like, I don't want you to look at it and go like, I wonder if it's creamy enough. If you're wondering if it's creamy enough, it's not. So it's like, it's good, but you need to be like, ugh, you know, that should be the reaction. Okay. I feel real good. This is very creamy. This is very luscious. This is very coating. This is very there. I didn't want to be bashing and smashing my guanciale all over the place or getting the guanciale like super coated. So that's why it goes in right at the end. The way it smells when you put the guanciale in. The way it looks. Everything about it. This applies to all pastas, but is another lesson in undercooking the pasta because I used more than 2 cups of pasta water and it took several minutes of tossing and adding the pasta water to get the pasta sauce where it needed to be. So that whole time, like the pasta is continuing to cook, and that's why we undercook our pasta. You think you want to be the first one to get served because you might get a bigger portion, but with pasta, as pasta is taken out of the pot, it reveals the sauce, and then the sauce is more accessible. Need a big guanciale on top. Some of the people who go second or third end up with more sauce, but you can always go back to the first one and just add a little more sauce. Oh God, this is gorgeous. It is not too greasy. It is not too fatty. It's not like too rich or anything. It's really well balanced. The spice from the pepper is so important, the chew of the pasta. And the guanciale cooked out like this and paired with the cheese, it has like such a deep, like nutty flavor and like a delicious porky flavor. Wow. Say what you want about the Italians. They're really good at making ingredients. I don't think I knew this when I started exploring the 4 pastas of Rome, but I really do think that alla Gricia is my favorite. It's got all of the creaminess that I want, but I love the porky addition. I love black pepper. So for me, she's perfect. So if you are one of those rare birds who has watched all 4 of the pastas of Rome, please let me know which one was your favorite and why. Hello, all of you meatballs. Today I am bringing you a recipe that has been a secret family recipe for all of these years. I am finally making meatballs on the channel. This is a recipe I've made over and over and over the decades, but today I'm revealing all of the secrets. I've got the recipe codified. It's the best batch of meatballs I ever made. I'm gonna make them this way from now on, and I hope that you will too. Secret bonus, it comes with its own marinara sauce. This is kind of like getting 2 recipes in one. I cannot wait. We're finally making meatballs. Before I dive into those meatballs, I want to give a special thanks and shout out to WeWork for sponsoring today's episode. Their WeWork All Access membership, which now starts at a special introductory price, is a great way for atypical office types like you and me to find a place to work near home or around the world. Coffee, tea, Wi-Fi, good vibes, and comfy chairs are all included. Are you someone who needs a great space to work while traveling? Click the link in the episode description to try WeWork All Access for yourself. Starting at a special introductory price, terms apply. Now let's get back to those balls. The process for making the meatballs is a little involved, right? You have to make the mix, you gotta roll the balls, you gotta brown them, you gotta do the whole thing. So the marinara that I make to go with these is like dead simple. So there's very few ingredients. The sauce has to be delicious on its own, but it's also the cooking medium for the meatballs later. So its flavor is also gonna be transformed at the end with the addition of the actual meatballs. So it's gonna taste good, no balls. It's gonna get even better with balls. So this is going into a pan over medium high. In this bowl, I have a large onion and 10 cloves of garlic. The first step is just sweating this all out together. Because of all the moisture from the onion, this is gonna look like pretty wet at the beginning. So we're just gonna cook off all of that moisture. So I'm just seasoning with salt and peps. So usually when it's like meatball making day, you just want to get the sauce on the stove and have that going in the background so that it gets a head start and is well on its way by the time it meets up with the balls, because everybody should be their like fully formed self before they form another union. A perfect union, you might say. At about the 10-minute mark, what I'm noticing now in the pan is that most of that liquid has been cooked off. The veg is gonna start to sizzle in the fat that's left behind. I'm gonna go a few minutes longer until I start to see the beginning of some browning. Starting to see some browning right at the bottom as I scrape up, and the veg is just starting to stick a tiny bit. I'm gonna remove what I need for the meatball mix. I'm not gonna measure this, I'm just eyeballing about half of the mixture. And this is one of the newest, I would say, and biggest changes that I've made to the meatball recipe that I've been making, is to actually use cooked vegetables instead of raw onion and garlic to season the meatball mix, because they have a ton of flavor, they're really tender, all of their sweetness has been brought out. So this brings a lot more to the meatball party. To the mixture that's left, I'm going to add a little bit of wine. You can just use a little bit of water to deglaze the pan, so the wine is totally optional. And I just want to evaporate that a bit. Before I actually add the tomatoes, I'm going to pour off some of the liquid. This isn't really a technique, but removing the tomato liquid is going to make it possible for me to stick a hand blender into these cans. And I'm going to add the tomato liquid. This also sort of conveniently slows things down now that the wine is evaporated, so that while I'm blending the tomatoes, I don't have to worry about this going too far or burning. I'm blending them because I don't actually want chunks of tomato in this sauce. That's just a personal preference. Like for me, the meatballs bring the texture and have enough going on. I also had a child who at the time really didn't like sauce that had hunks of tomato, so it's just something that like over time is just the way that we do it. The last thing I'm gonna do is just rinse out these 2 cans to get all of that little bits of tomato that are stuck, so about halfway up with both of them, and add the water to the marinara. If when you went freezer diving for your dregs of white wine, you found a parm rind that you should definitely be freezing, please add that to the pot as well. And this is it for the marinara. So now I'm gonna partially cover this pot and let that go while I do my meatball process, and then they will catch up at the perfect time. Small handful of parsley. In this bowl, I already have a pound of ground beef chuck. So you want to look for something that's 80% lean, 20% fat, with 1 pound of ground pork. You want your total weight to be 2 pounds. So this should measure around a 1/4 cup, but it's really all good if it's a nice handful. Here's my cooked veg, the onion, garlic, olive oil, salt, pepper. The beauty of this is that you're not going to detect like a raw onion or raw garlic bits in the meatball. I've also got 2 large eggs. Eggs are important as a binder, but the other important thing for the meatball mix is moisture. So you don't want something that's like bound really tight, because then you're going to have tough balls, and nobody wants tough balls. But if it's too wet, you're not going to be able to form them. They're going to be too loosey-goosey. So it's about finding that balance to also help not only with binding but with texture. I'm using panko breadcrumbs. The reason that there's breadcrumbs in the mix is because the breadcrumb is going to kind of combine completely homogenously with the meat, and having those bits of bread throughout is going to interrupt the protein strands of the meat from like making long chains. With shorter little chains of protein that tighten up, you're going to get a more tender ball. So it's all about the tender ball. All right, so I've also got a full teaspoon of red chili flake, a teaspoon of garlic powder. So we've got garlic 2 ways. They don't overlap each other, they accentuate each other. I'm putting a full 2 teaspoons of dry oregano in here as well. I've got grated parm and 2 teaspoons of salt. So this is my usual teaspoon per pound of protein. So 2 pounds of ground meats, 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm also adding a 1/4 cup or 2 ounces of extra virgin olive oil. This is going to enrich the meatballs. It helps with the loosely held together texture, and it just flavors them, makes them incredibly delicious. And even though there's red pepper, I'm gonna add a little bit of black as well. The goal here with mixing is you want really a homogeneous mixture. If you want to get in there with your hands, you can do that. But I find a wooden spoon is also a good tool. Listen, don't get mad at me. I'm doing this in a more shallow bowl than I normally would because I want you guys to see inside. You're looking to thoroughly combine, absolutely homogeneous, everything evenly combined, but don't squeeze the balls. We don't want like a super tight texture because again, that will lead to toughness. There should be no like clump of cheese anywhere. You should not see that, oh, that's pork meat over there, that's beef over there. Like everything really coming together without being compacted, because when you compact them, that's when they'll end up tough. This looks thoroughly combined to me. Everything is evenly dispersed. I'm very happy with the mixture. The next thing I have to do is fry off a test patty, and then we'll be able to form the balls. Very important to make a test patty. This is really your only opportunity to make sure that the meatball itself is seasoned properly before it is over. You've browned them and then they go into the sauce. Like you're not gonna have another opportunity to check the seasoning. She's a sizzling. And I made it a patty instead of a ball so it'll cook faster. So this is a technical Scooby snack. It's a Scooby snack for the chef that is also essential. You have to do it. It's cheesy, it's perfect. We're good to go. The best time of day is ball formation time of day. I've got a rim baking sheet. I'm gonna throw a little oil on there, and then I'm just gonna put my hands into the pan, get a thin layer of oil everywhere, and then with the oil that's on my hands, this is gonna make it easier for me to form the balls without the meat sticking. You can make your balls as big or as small as you want, but in the recipe, I am going for about a 2-ounce ball. They will expand a bit as they cook. Listen, they're gonna be round now, and they're gonna get flat when you brown them. I have not figured out a way to keep the ball round when it's being browned. If someone knows the trick to that, please let me know. This is about an average ball size, and I'm not looking for bigger balls than that. This is as big a ball as we need. He's got big balls. You know what I mean? That's what I want people to say about me. The last ball is either gonna be like a little bit bigger than all the other balls or a little bit smaller. And in this case, I got a big ball on my hands. Gross, Carla. Okay, So I ended up today with 4, 16, 18. So close to 20, give or take. I'm gonna brown the meatballs in olive oil again. This is another 1/4 cup or so. They will release some fat as they cook. Once the pan is hot and the oil is shimmering, go ahead, get those going. So this browning process, again, is like a little bit of a process. It's just time. It's not complicated. I have done this many different ways in the past. I'm doing the method that I think yields the best browning and the best flavor. If you were doing a big batch and cooking for like a crowd, get your best pal, set up a second skillet, and go twice as fast. 2 balls for the price of 1. You know, again, it's a sphere, so it's like, it doesn't have sides, but you want to brown it on all sides. And they don't have to be super dark, but some nice browning, a little bit of a crust. They're brown on most of their exterior, and at that point, I'm gonna go ahead and just drop them straight into the marinara. The marinara has been going for about an hour. The marinara tastes great. It's got a head start. It's reduced a bit. So together, they're gonna kind of finish. I don't cook the balls for that long in the sauce. I just want them to finish cooking in the sauce, but just so they'll absorb all of the delicious flavor of the sauce, but not dry out or get tough. Now that everybody is in the sauce, I'm going to make sure that I'm maintaining a simmer, completely cover the pot, and let these go for 25 to 30 minutes, which should be plenty of time for them to finish cooking through and get really saucy and flavorful. Ain't no party like a ball party, am I right? Especially balls that have been simmering for approximately half an hour. Ooh. Oh, the meat steam facial. I mean, is there anything more luxurious? Definitely a few different ways that you can serve these. You could choose to make a big pot of pasta and mix the pasta in with the sauce and the balls. You could have meatballs as an appetizer, which is kind of the vibe that I am bringing today. So you want to serve them with like a good amount of sauce. Gorgeous and fabulous. So many ways to enjoy balls. So the way I'm gonna have them is with extra sauce, a nice sprinkle of parm, a little bit of bread for dips. Just check out our marinara, get acquainted. If the sauce is good, the meatballs are good. If the meatballs are good, the sauce is good. So you can see different textures for everything that's in there. It's not like one packed together single vibe. These are the best meatballs I ever made. They have an insane amount of flavor. They're juicy as hell, almost like the way a burger is juicy. They don't taste greasy. They're grown up, sophisticated balls. Great news for you guys is like you don't have to go through all those haphazard expression of ballism. You can just start here at my height. I'm proud of myself and I'm really ecstatic for all of us. I'm even happy for the balls. Great job, balls. Hello, all you silly little ragooses. It's Carla, and I'm here today in my kitchen with a deep cut from where cooking begins. Today, I am making rosemary chicken ragu with polenta. This is one of my favorite braises because I'm using dark meat skin on chicken, which is going to cook in like a third of the amount of time that red meat would take, but it's gonna deliver all of the deep, rich flavors of a long cooked braise because of this gorgeous bed of aromatic vegetables. And if that wasn't enough, a hands-off polenta method that is gonna create a bed for all of those sauces and shredded chicken to go on top. I haven't made this recipe in a while. I'm very excited to have it again. Let's cook. All braises pretty much start with browning. You need fat to brown. And so instead of using olive oil, I'm going to choose pancetta, which is a fat that also has a lot of flavor. The pancetta is then going to be a flavor in the base of the sauce. It's also going to become a garnish for the finished braise. So we're getting a lot out of this product. If you can't get your hands on pancetta, you could definitely use bacon. You could also use guanciale. Start with slab bacon, so you can cut it into nice big pieces so you actually get the texture of the pancetta at the end. I asked for this in one piece rather than buying sliced pancetta. You may be familiar with some of my previous pancetta work in videos such as pasta alla matriciana, which you can definitely check out. And you know what else is great, just like pancetta? Liking and subscribing. So if you like pork fat, please ring the bell, subscribe to the channel. All right, I'm over medium heat, and I don't want to sear or like deeply brown the pancetta straight out of the gates. I want to start it on medium heat so that the fat starts to melt and render into the bottom of the pan before creating like a brown hardened seared edge, at which point it will be harder to get that fat to flow. This particular pancetta is really nice and meaty, so it's not throwing off a ton of fat, but I'm about 6 minutes in. I have some really nice golden brown coloring. It's starting to crisp, but it hasn't gone to like a fully crunchy state because we want it to have that nice juiciness and chewiness left to it. But I do want to remove the pancetta now. I'm going to brown the chicken in these renderings. It's going to be more beautiful flavor. And once the braise is going, I'm going to throw the pancetta back in. I've got about 2 pounds of chicken thighs. It's about 8 thighs, 2 thighs per person. You could definitely use chicken leg quarters that still have the drumstick attached if you wanted to. I just like that when you're eating a thigh, there's only one bone to get out of the way, and you just get a lot of really nice meat. It makes it super easy. A little black pepper. I'm going to season the skin now and start it on the skin side, and then the other side will be available to me for seasoning. Same principle as the pancetta. I want the fat to render, so I want to start on a moderate heat to let that happen, to let things start melting, rather than throwing the chicken into a really hot pan where it's just going to seize up and get brown. You won't get as nice browning, and you won't get as much fat rendering either. It's too cold to go outside, so now cooking has become our entertainment. It's become our companion. It's become our way to avoid other things that we don't feel like doing. And when you're browning meats for a braise, you're stepping into the meditative phase of cooking. So this is truly why cooking, relaxation, and recreation are bonded in harmony. Now I've got the whole underside, which is now the overside exposed. I'm going to season that as well. So even though the majority of the braise is going to be hands off, this is the stage where you're paying attention. If you need to lower the heat because things are going too fast, you're nearby. You're watching, you're listening, you're learning, you're relaxing, and it's going to take a minute. So it took 12 minutes, but we've arrived at a key moment for this recipe. With time and medium heat and some attention, the chicken is beautifully rendered and beautifully browned and ready to be turned over. I'm not looking for the same amount of color on the second side. I just want to cook it long enough to kind of sear and get lightly golden brown. That's going to take about 6 minutes, at which point the chicken won't be cooked through, but it will be time for the chicken to come out. While the second side is going is kind of a good time to prep the vegetables. So I'm going to smash a few cloves of garlic. I already have chopped fennel, chopped onion, rosemary standing by. Recipe calls for 6. This head has maybe 8. Just gonna put all of them in. What could go wrong? Chicken is ready to come out. Another important thing at this stage to kind of keep an eye on is all of those beautiful drippings and little bits of protein and skin that are sticking to the pan. You don't want those to burn either. So staying over this moderate heat is your friend in that as well. I have beautiful like caramel colored golden brown drippings, and that's exactly what you want to be looking for as well. All right, gorgeous pile of chicken is just gonna go to the side for a minute. Those aromatics going in, fennel, onion, garlic, right into the same fat. Right away, I'm gonna season this with salt as well. We're building flavor. Every single layer has to be seasoned nicely. As these vegetables cook, they're gonna get really nice and juicy. They're gonna start to release their liquid. That liquid is gonna help deglaze the bottom of the pan. Hello, class is in session. This spoon is going over there, and then it's going over here, and then going over there, then it's going over there, and then it goes there, and there, and there, and there. Things are underway, looking very juicy. All the fond is scraped up. I'm gonna season, instead of using black pepper, I'm going to season with red pepper at this point. I don't wanna add it right at the beginning because I didn't want it to burn. If you're not a spicy person, you can just add black pepper here. And I'm also gonna drop in the rosemary, give it a couple of squeezes first, get the aromas going, toss that in. And then we're gonna stay here cooking the veg until it starts getting brown, so a few more minutes. Vegetables are not only softened and translucent, but they're starting to take on a little bit of color. And the garlic, I can break up into smaller pieces with my spoon, and they're just smashing down, which is a really good indicator. So this is another key stage for the vegetables. They are right at the point where they are about to take on some really nice color, but they haven't totally fallen apart, and they're softened and juicy. Now, all of the drippings and the browning, the fond from the chicken that was deglazed from the vegetable cooking liquid, now what I have is a buildup of the browning and the fond from the sweetness in the vegetables themselves, which I'm gonna deglaze with some white wine. This white wine was what was left over from a bottle. I actually pulled this out of the freezer. So if you ever have just like the last little bit from a bottle of wine, don't pour it down the drain or pretend you're gonna drink it and then not drink it, just freeze it. So now with the liquid from the white wine, I can go back in and deglaze all of the vegetable browned bits. And I wanna continue cooking this until the wine has pretty much evaporated. So we're stirring and we're scraping, but we're also bubbling and simmering and cooking this wine off. Once the wine is cooked off, I'm doing one of the little cutie cans of tomatoes. These are whole tomatoes with their liquid. And I'm gonna rinse this out with like filling it halfway up with water. Pour that back over. I'm gonna use my spoon to just encourage these tomatoes to break up a little bit. They'll fall apart during the braise, but just kind of breaking the seal at the beginning. Remember to reserve half of the pancetta for garnishing later. So I'm gonna put half of it, eyeballing it, back in. And then the chicken's going back in the same formation, skin side up. The skin is sort of like, almost like a little built-in lid for the chicken. It's gonna keep them moist. The flesh side is gonna be down in this liquid, braising and falling apart. And any juices that were left on this plate, obviously, I wanna add those back into the pan as well. I'm increasing the heat to get us back to a simmer, which is, we're basically there. Important thing about a braise, you don't really want a rolling boil for a nice shallow braise like this. Just a gentle simmer that's gonna get maintained for the whole time that it's cooking. So I just wanna see that my liquid is at a simmer before I throw the lid on. This is gonna go for about an hour and a half. I'll check it maybe 2 to 3 times, but you want really low and slow, just maintaining a really bare simmer for 90 minutes. The chicken's been going for about an hour, so we're gonna just do one of our stir-in checks. Definitely not going too hot, too fast, and just kinda going in between to make sure nothing evaporated too much underneath the chicken and started to stick. It's beautiful, it's hot, it's cooking. This is the perfect time to start my oven polenta. You know, I've already made oven polenta before in my floppy broccoli recipe. If you haven't watched that, please do. And in it, you can see me go through all of the steps to making oven polenta start to finish. But I'm not gonna ask you to watch me do that again. Instead, I'm just gonna ask you to come along, use your imagination, and dream a little polenta dream.
All the corn is gold, and the sauce is red, making some polenta, with some chicken
Time to check the chicken. Oh, chicken check. Steam check, vibe check, chicken check. Getting to the end of the braise is about how much time has elapsed, but more importantly, it's about what is your chicken feeling like. So after 90 minutes, you want to get in there and check it out. I am looking for a shreddable texture, and even though I left the skin on, I want the skin to very easily just like slide right off. And with 2 forks, you should really be able to pull the meat apart into delicious bite-sized pieces. Oh yeah. Oh God, beautiful. I couldn't have asked for a more successful chicken check. All right, everybody is shredded. I removed bones and skin. I'm gonna add this back into this delicious ragu. And I'm serving it over polenta today, but you could just as easily use rice, put this over pasta. You could spoon it onto big crusty pieces of bread in a shallow bowl, whatever you wanna do. Taste and season. Pretty good. I don't think I need salt. I'm tasting the chili. Sauce is really nice and tomatoey, rich. Good to go. Bring it all together, folks. Got my beautiful oven polenta. Creamy and delightful. Just want to get like all of the good bite-sized pieces of the chicken and lots of sauce and veg. And then everybody should enjoy a couple crispy pancetta on top. And by everybody, I mean me. Your choice on utensil. Put them both out. The other night I was making dinner and sitting down with my young lad, Cosmo, and he declared that the spoon is truly the most versatile utensil. And he might be right. I'm gonna go with the spoon in his honor. You get like really nice brightness from the tomato, which is balancing out. You've got all these like rich flavors, the sweetness of the onion. There's a little tang in the pancetta and the tomato and the aroma of the rosemary. You really got it all. People are gonna tell you a lot of things about braises. They're gonna tell you that they are one pot cooking. They're gonna tell you that they are easy and hands off. They're not gonna tell you that the braise represents escapism from our everyday life. And then I was transported through, frankly, there's no other way to put it, polenta dreamin'. And now I'm living a fantasy. Fantasy polenta island.